Hello. I wanted to take a little break from the tarot series today to advertise something new on the Mystery School website, which is a new version of the I Ching. Most people that are familiar with tarot probably have some idea of what the I Ching is. It's actually one of the oldest continually used systems of divination. It's a sacred book from China that dates back thousands of years. We know that it was in use about 3,000 years ago at least, but probably longer. And it ties in with the concepts in Taoism of the structure of the universe, of the Tao and the yin and the yang, and then the elements that emerge from the yin and the yang. Now, the I Ching is set up as a kind of oracle where you study the book, but then you can do divinations as a process of self-inquiry to answer questions. You cast sticks or coins, or there are other methods in which you end up getting one of 64 possible combinations of what are called hexagrams, which are a series of 6 lines, and each line is either solid or broken, representing yang or yin, positive or negative. And each of these lines, when you put 3 of them together, they form an element, a trigram, and 2 elements combined make 1 hexagram, which is useful to create an analysis of your situation. And I think that there are probably a lot of people in the West, including people who are familiar with the tarot, that aren't all that familiar with the I Ching because they've found it too complicated. One of the reasons for that is that the translations of the I Ching that have been available, generally speaking, tended to be pretty heavy with commentary and details, and the translation themselves sometimes tended to be either too literal or too academic. And so you had some translations that added in all of this commentary that came along later. There were many very intellectual and often very wise sages that commented on the I Ching, including Confucius. And some of the books that you might find on the I Ching will tend to be books that have not just the text itself, but all the commentary that's added on. And this is very good if you want to do kind of a thorough study of the I Ching. But it's not as good from a practical level to study the I Ching as a divination tool. And nor is it necessarily the best if you're looking at the I Ching from the point of view of mystical practice, because it can sometimes muddy the waters of the essence of the teaching that is inside of the I Ching, which is a teaching that reveals the nature of change and how change flows and moves like a river, and how if you can understand the nature of change, you can understand a lot about yourself and your present situation, and from there extrapolate to know what is the right or the natural course to take towards the future. So I've done a new version of the I Ching that strips away all the additional commentary and has only the essential text of the I Ching. And the language that I use in this version is a language that is focused on trying to be as plainly understandable as possible, and not necessarily a literal translation of the words, but a translation of the spiritual essence of all of the different lines in the text. So on the one hand, I try to create bridges in the language used in the I Ching between Eastern and Western symbolism and Eastern and Western mysticism, which are really the same, but that the way that they present their language often can make them seem like they're more different than they really are. And of course, the I Ching also has some cultural baggage, you could say, that there are lines in the text that are commonly understood, or would have been commonly understood. I don't know if they'd necessarily even be commonly understood in China today, but they would certainly have been commonly understood in China, 3,000 years ago, that somebody reading them today, say in North America or in Europe or in the Western world, would not necessarily really understand the significance of those words. Some of them have to do with just cultural aspects, and some of them have to do with things like figures of speech or sayings that would have been common sayings then, but that aren't common now. So I've tried to adapt those areas, those lines, in ways that make them at least easier to understand. So I think that this text will be quite useful. And I'm not going to do a full commentary series on the I Ching here, because I think the I Ching, unlike the tarot, because it's not exactly visual the way the tarot is, it doesn't really lend itself as well as the tarot does to this kind of video commentary that I've been doing. So instead, I just went and I did this new version, this new translation, if you would, of the I Ching, and I've put it up on the website, which the link to the website you'll find in the description of this video. So I hope that you'll check it out if you've ever had any interest in the I Ching, or if what I've said now makes you interested, and take a look, because I find that the I Ching is at least as useful as the tarot, and is very complementary to somebody's spiritual practice in understanding, because the tarot has within it all of the teaching of a kind of a metaphysic. It breaks down the whole universe into those 78 cards, and the I Ching breaks down the whole universe into those 64 trigrams, hexagrams, but they do it in very different ways, because the emphasis on the tarot is on this kind of personal process, this personal path of self-transformation, which can be very good. But the I Ching does it in the way of studying how change affects environments, and so it gives you a completely different look at the same basic kind of phenomenon. So I hope that you'll enjoy this new version of the I Ching, and that you'll find it useful.